welcome, welcome, welcome. If you don't yet have a notebook, grab a notebook, grab a pen. This is going to be action-packed, my friends. All right, let's get started, Sarah.
All right. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. All right, so first, just to start, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself and kind of my backstory as the founder and CEO of Impactury. Then I'll tell you a little bit about Sky and just our partnership together. And then she's going to tell you all about navigating change. And at the end, we'll go through some strategies and also just opportunities to really support you in your own journey for change. Okay, so I'm the founder of Impactury. We offer 2-week eco-luxury wellness retreats in Nepal to women executives who are seeking more purpose and less stress. And before this, I worked with mission-based organizations globally as a COO. I also worked in corporate as a consultant for Accenture, and I'm very passionate about social entrepreneurship. So I co-founded a clean water social enterprise in Ethiopia. I really loved my work, but unfortunately, I had unchecked just stress that ended up leading to debilitating anxiety, depression. I had uncontrollable weight loss. It was a really, really difficult time for me. And I actually, because of this, I ended up having to stop working. And for me, this was so difficult because work is such a huge part of who I am. But with this break, it actually ended up being a blessing in disguise, because without that key piece of my identity, actually, and the time and space away from the busyness of my day-to-day and work and everything, I actually had the opportunity to reflect on how I got to this place. You know, how did I end up as a very healthy person having all of these health challenges? And I realized that that my success was really being driven by a need to be perfect. And one second. I think Sky got kicked out. And so I realized that my success was really driven by a need to be perfect all the time. I didn't have self-love for myself. And through all of this, I discovered meditation, and I'm such a firm believer that without self-awareness, which is what meditation helped me to cultivate, there really is no self-development. And through this, I discovered a more intentional, aligned way of living and working. And now I'm healthy again, and I'm just loving the work that I'm doing, which is leading Impactury and partnering with incredible people like Sky. And so now I'm really hoping to create a safe space for women to be able to heal and reconnect with their authentic selves. And so through my own journey of connecting with who I am and really operating from a place of authenticity, I've just been able to work with incredible people like Sky. She has her own really beautiful story of personal transformation. Sorry, I keep on admit these people. She has her own really beautiful story of personal transformation, and for me, she's someone who really leads and inspires other others by example. She used to work at Accenture as well and left that and is now leading her own company that she's able to do personal transformation and help other people live, again, just a life that is in more alignment with more ease, less stress. So I'm going to hand it over to her so she can tell you a little bit about more about herself, and then we'll go into the event.
Thank you, Sarah. And for those of you who I did not say hello to, hello and welcome. Nice to see some familiar faces here. So as Sarah mentioned, I have a long-standing background as a consulting executive at Accenture, left the firm to start my own work, really had a series of life-changing events, including being robbed at gunpoint, having a really serious panic attack that I thought was going to take my life, losing my best friend, losing my dad, going through the cancer journey with my mom. And I think through those life-altering experiences have really brought clarity in the work that I want to do in this world, who I want to be in this world, and how I want to show up. I would say I am on a serious mission to normalize and globalize what I call the relaxed hustle, like unapologetically being serious about going after really bold ambitions, achieving that level of success, leaving an impact, building a life of legacy, and doing that with a higher quality experience. It doesn't have to be the constant hustle and grind. We can find joy, we can find ease, we can create more calm and flow in our lives. We had a session yesterday with a group that has been journeying with me, and the guy said, I don't know, it's starting to feel like things are just falling into place. And I'm like, yes, that's what it feels like when life starts to happen for you. So I bring that passion, that mission to the work that I do. Lots about my bio, and I'm sure if you check out my LinkedIn profile, you can see a lot more about the kinds of clients that I work with, and really bringing and integrating neuroscience, leadership maturity, but also with the contemplative practices and bringing those things together to help people build their personal mastery and just live more fulfilling lives. So that is the work that I do. It is such an honor to be partnering with Sarah. We came together not knowing each other from Accenture, but meeting in the afterlife of Accenture, surprisingly. And we just shared this passion and are on a very similar mission. So we're excited to be partnering to bring today's session with you, but also to partner in a retreat that Sarah is hosting that I will have the absolute joy and privilege of facilitating in Nepal in April. I cannot wait. We'll tell you more about it at the end of the session. But let's jump in. I want to hear a little bit more about each of you. And I'm sure the reason that brought you here today is because you're likely going through a personal transformation. So I want to make this really practical for you. And I want you to start by really thinking about what is this personal change that you are experiencing in your life. So go ahead and tell me in the chat if you are in fact going through a personal change. That might be something at work, dynamics in a relationship, maybe you're moving, maybe you've got a child that's getting ready to go to college, a newborn, or a parent in their final chapter. Maybe there's something about your identity and who you see yourself to be shifting. Maybe there's a way that your perspective on life, your worldview, starting a business. Congratulations, Shannon. Maybe you found yourself living with commitments that you've made in the past that are no longer relevant or working for your present reality, and maybe just not appropriate for this next chapter and phase of the future that you are stepping into. Transitioning from graduate school, wow, lots of changes, to the workforce. Congratulations, Gabriella. Looking to get out of my current career and move into a career that serves me and the planet. Wonderful, Alta. So keep dropping, and if you don't want to share the details of what you're experiencing, but just really bringing that to the forefront of the conversation so that this can be real for you. So if you're going through a personal change, there's 3 fundamental truths that will be true for you in this moment. And these are the core premises of what we're going to be exploring today. So truth number 1, you can go to the next slide, Sarah. In case y'all didn't get the memo, Natasha, you've probably heard me talk about this already. If you have not gotten the memo, consider yourself told. We are living in a VUCA world. I'll explain more what that means in the presentation, but just know that this really helps to clarify and crystallize why life feels so hard right now. And while it's a relatively new concept, ancient wisdom also tells us that the only thing constant in the world is change. And that's truth number 2, which is the universal law of impermanence, right? Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Truth number 3, I know it feels hard. I know it feels uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be that way. So with these 3 fundamental truths, our agenda for today is hopefully help you to gain some clarity on this change that you're navigating. This is less about me downloading information to you and more about you walking away from this hour that you are investing, feeling more clarity, feeling, thinking, and maybe even able to do something different about the change that you are experiencing. So that is my hope and intention. I'm a brain science nerd, so we got to throw some science in here and talk about the brain science of change and why is it so hard? Like, why does it have to feel this hard? We'll talk about that. And then I want to make sure that you have some really practical strategies, but also mindset shifts that can support you in navigating this change. We'll spend some time at the end just talking about 2 ways that you might consider continuing to do this work. One, which starts immediately on Sunday, and then of course, Sarah's retreat in April. If you want to stick around for that, please stay tuned. So based on our agenda, jump into the chat, give me a heck yes, a thumbs up, a heart, a smiley face. Tell me something if you feel that this is an agenda worth sticking around for. Jump in the chat and let me know. All right, Matthew says, yes, please. All right. I mentioned this before. If you haven't yet, grab a notebook, grab a pen, because this is going to be action-packed, okay? So you've named the change, and I want you to get a lot more familiar. We have this tendency when something isn't going the way that we might want it to go, we tend to focus on wanting to fix the thing. And my invitation for you today is to become more familiar with the thing. So close your eyes if that is helpful, helping you to really shift your attention from anything that's happening outside of you, the presentation, the faces on the screen, closing your eyes to shift your attention inward for a moment. And I'll just invite you to take a deep breath in. And just bringing to mind really this inquiry, deeply asking yourself, what's shifting? What's changing? What's evolving in my life? What's shifting, changing, or evolving for me right now? And really feel the undercurrent of that change that is happening, that is unfolding for you. There might be many things, and that's okay. You might choose to really tune in to one that is calling for your attention. What is calling for my attention? What one thing might be asking for me to investigate a little bit more in the time that I've dedicated today? And trusting that you've made the right choice. Ask yourself, what is life inviting me to let go of? What is life inviting me to let go of? And what's emerging? How is my future presenting itself in my life right now? So take another deep breath in. And just releasing, opening the mouth, allowing yourself to release and let go. When you're ready, open your eyes and just write down whatever wisdom came up for you as you sat with that 1 minute reflection. What's shifting, changing, or evolving? What might life be inviting you to let go of, and what's emerging? Just take some notes. I'll give you a few moments of silence to do that. So we'll continue to deepen our investigation where we'll make the best use of the time that we have. There's a lot more, I'm sure, that you can unpack here. But I think for the most part, we can likely all agree that life in some way is asking us to let go of something and take a leap into the unknown of something new. Yeah. So this, thank you, Matthew, for the affirmative head nod, very helpful. So this space, what I call the space, the in-between space, the space of transition, can be very disorienting. But what I want you to really ground in is the truth that it's also the richest, most fertile soil for creation. But it also requires something very different of us. So I want to take a moment to really contemplate that and really get into the soup of the feeling of transition and what it feels like to be in the space in between. And I'll read an excerpt from The Parable of the Trapeze by Danan Parry. Beautiful excerpt. So feel free to close your eyes again and just allow yourself to take this in and see what about this might resonate for you. Here we go. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging on to a trapeze bar, swinging along for a few moments in my life. I'm hurtling across the space in between the trapeze bars. Most of the time, I spend my life hanging on for dear life to my trapeze bar of the moment, the flavor of the month. It carries me along at a certain steady rate of swing, and I feel that feeling that I'm somehow in control of my life, like I really have a good grip on things. I know most of the right questions, and I might even have some of the answers. But every once in a while, as I'm merrily or not so merrily swinging along, I look out ahead, and in the distance, I see another trapeze bar swinging towards me. It's empty, and I know, in that place in me that knows, that this new trapeze bar has my name on it. It's my next step, my invitation for growth, my aliveness that is coming to get me. And in my hearts of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I have to release my grip on this present, very familiar, well-known bar, and I have to move to the new one. And each time it happens, I hope that I won't have to let go of my old bar completely before I grab to the new one. I want to be able to hold on to them both. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp of my old bar. And for some moment in time, I must take that leap. I must hurdle across the space before I can grab onto the new bar. Each time I am filled with terror, it doesn't matter that in all of my previous hurdles across the void of the unknown, I've always made it. But every time I'm afraid that I will miss, that I will be crushed on unknown rocks in the bottomless chasm in the space between the bars. But despite that fear, I do it anyway. I soar across the dark void of the past. The future is not yet here. This space, the space in between, is called transition. And I've come to believe that this transition is the only place that real change actually happens. I mean, real change, not the pseudo change that only lasts until the next time my old buttons get punched. I've noticed that in our culture, this transition zone is looked upon as the no thing, a no place between places. And so, sure, the old trapeze bar was real, and that new one coming towards me, I hope it's real too. But the void in between, is that just scary, confusing, disoriented, nowhere that must be gotten through as fast as unconsciously possible? Well, I have a sneaky suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing, and the bars are just an illusion we dream up to avoid the void where the real change, the real growth happens for us. Whether or not this hunch is true, it remains the transition zone in our lives that are incredibly rich places, the place that should be honored and even savored. So yes, with all the pain, the fear, the feelings of being out of control, of not feeling like you have a grip on things, they're still the most alive, the most growth-filled and passionate, expansive moments in our lives. And so, our transformation of this fear, of the space in between, may have nothing to do with making the fear go away, but rather giving ourselves the permission to be with the fear, to hang out in the transition between the trapezes. Transforming our need to grab that new bar is allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens, the place where we can grow. And yes, it can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening, because hurtling through the void, we may just learn how to fly. The end. So open your eyes if they were closed, and put a heart, smiley face, whatever emoji you want, and share if you'd like, what about this resonates for you? What about this feels true for you? Feel free to take a moment to drop what you loved about this in the chat. I'll quickly check. So, Charlene says, let's see, love the portion about the permission. Yes, that grace, right, Charlene? The grace. Just give yourself the grace to feel the fear. Real change happens in the void. Yes. Because the chances are, if we try to let go of, try to hold on to the new bar while gripping to the old bar, we'll likely look for the same, because this is what we know and this is what's familiar. But when we allow ourselves to let go of that old bar and void into that new space, so much more possibility becomes available to us, even more than we imagined was possible for ourselves. And so some of you might find that this new trapeze bar, the feeling of a new change, it might happen every once in a while. But for some of you, you might feel like there's a constant new trapeze bar that's swinging your way. Like just when you thought you had things figured out, things change again. Yeah. That's because we're living in a VUCA world. So what, I keep saying this word VUCA, what is it? Let's get into it. VUCA is an acronym that is used to describe the characteristics of war in Afghanistan. And it's now being used by behavioral economists to describe life in our modern society. Grasp that for a moment. It's used to describe the conditions of war and is now being used to describe the characteristics of life in our modern society. And this is even before the war in Ukraine, right? So what behavioral economists are basically saying is we are living in warlike conditions and our brain registers our experience in that way. So let's look at what this acronym stands for. V is volatility, U is uncertainty, C is complexity, and A is ambiguity. It's the modern world where I'm just the messenger, guys. I hate to tell you, but the pace of change is the fastest it has ever been, and yet the slowest it will ever be. So buckle up, because life is about to get even more lifey. If you can imagine the possibility of that, right? Where as leaders, so many of us are forced to make decisions, to act without really having all the information or the resources that we need, right? We're faced with constantly having to juggle multiple factors, multiple things to consider, and make decisions at a pace that is overwhelming our capacity to think and actually process. And I hear this a lot from clients, like, I don't even feel like I have the time to think, except for when I'm in the shower or taking a long drive and I meant to go to the grocery store, but I find myself at home and I'm like, wait a minute, I was supposed to go to the grocery store. Yes, to think or to process. Exactly, Natasha. So we're constantly being faced with the unfamiliar circumstances that are forcing us outside of our comfort zone, like the pandemic. So if you drop them on the screen, Sarah, there's a bit of animation there. I want to hear from you all. How many of these would you say you can relate to? How many of these feel true for you? Put in the chat, one of these, two of these, three of these, all four, all of the above. How many of these feel true for you? Complexity, for sure. Constantly being outside of our comfort zone. Complexity of multiple factors. Think back to the pandemic. If you have kids, are they going to be able to go back to school? What does that mean? Well, I'm now working from home. I'm going to have to homeschool them. Can I go to the grocery store without gloves? Do I need gloves? Do I need to spray everything? Not spray, like all things, right? And for a lot of us, if you're keeping a pulse on the recent layoffs that we're seeing in the tech industry, right, that's just so many complexities of life right now. And so the combination of these two things is really making life incredibly difficult. And it's not that any one of these hasn't always been true. It's the unique combination of all of them that, from a brain science perspective, is really amplifying the way that we're experiencing change, right? And there's a brain scientist, David Rock. He is the founder of the Neuroleadership Institute. And he is predicting that the moment that we are in is so volatile, it is so unprecedented, that it will be the impetus for the next evolution of our brains. That we are losing the capacity to manage the complexities and the VUCA-ness of life. So our brains are having to adapt in new ways. Isn't that fascinating? Like we are alive in this moment where our brains are evolving. Like that just gets me really excited. So let's dive into the science of change. There's two really important things that I want you to know. One is the SCARF model. Okay. Once a consultant, always a consultant. You can take the girl out of consulting, but you cannot take the consulting out of the girl. Okay. So the frameworks, we're going to hit you with the frameworks. Okay. The SCARF model is a very helpful framework that helps you to really understand what might be at play for you in the struggles that you're having navigating change. So David Rock came up with this acronym called SCARF. It stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. It's 5 social domains. I call them hot buttons that when pushed can activate our threat responses. So let's go through these, and I want you to think about this change that you're experiencing and see if you can identify which of these is being triggered for you. So status is about this feeling of relative importance to others. Am I valuable? What is my value here? Certainty is about being able to predict the future. I need to know what's happening. I want to know what's happening. Autonomy is about a sense of control over the events. I want to know that I'm at choice. I want to feel like I have options. I want to feel that I have personal agency in what is happening, right? So if you think about the hybrid work environment, everyone's going back to the office, or everyone's, we're getting rid of the office, or you have to think about the choices that might have been made if you were in an environment like that, and what that felt like I have to go in, losing that sense of autonomy. Relatedness is a sense of safety with others. Am I in the in-group or am I in the out-group? It's this primal need for social belonging. And then fairness is a perception that there's a fair exchange between people. I want to be respected, is fairness. So if you think about someone who might be going through a layoff, wow, what does this mean for my status? What does this mean for my ability to add value to my family? Am I going to get another job? Are we going to be able to take that summer vacation that I had planned for the kids? Am I going to be able to afford their summer camp, or, not having the certainty of where the next income is coming from? Maybe feeling a lack of relatedness, because now if I'm being laid off, then I'm really not in the in-group anymore. I am officially in the out-group. Or a change of job, right? And then how is this fair? Why me? Why do they get to stay and I have to go? And here's what's fascinating about the SCARF model. From a fundamental human level, the way that we place value on these social domains is equal to our survival. They did a bunch of research on this, and the pain that we feel when any one of these domains is triggered is equal to the pain that we would feel if a cup of hot coffee drops in our lap, or burns our hand, or we put our hand on the stove. Our brain registers physical pain in the same way that it registers social pain. So when any of these buttons go off and you feel a lack of safety because one of your SCARF triggers has been activated, you're feeling that pain in the same way that you would the physical pain. So this change can trigger a threat response, right? We go through this change. One of our SCARF domains is triggered. There's animation here, Sarah. And our brain registers threat. And when our brain registers threat, we fall into fear. Now, what happens when we fall into fear? Fear has a fundamental function in keeping us safe. And it's sort of like, the voice in our head that says, hey, watch out. There's something you need to be careful of. That's the role of fear. But from a brain science perspective, when we fall into fear, the thinking, rational part of our brains go offline, and we get an amygdala hijack, which is the emotional part of our brain, comes online. So it's sort of like a seesaw. So this is a balanced mind. And if this is the amygdala and this is the neocortex, the amygdala is now online and in charge, and the neocortex goes offline. What does that mean? I don't have the capacity, to your point, Natasha, process and think about and rationalize what I'm experiencing because the emotion of it is taking over. I facilitated a retreat a couple of weeks ago in Mexico, and one of the women, it was hilarious. She got a rubber snake And she decided to throw the snake in the pool where the other women were in the swimming pool. And of course, you can imagine what happened, right? The woman scrambled out of the pool because they saw the snake and ran for it. And one of the women said, well, that was so weird. Like, I saw that it was a plastic snake. I knew cognitively it was a plastic snake, but I still came out of the water. Why is that? Our emotions will drive our actions, even when our cognitive brain says otherwise. Hence the importance of building emotional mastery so that we can regulate our emotions and we can be in the driver's seat, or we can pause and say, oh, it's just a plastic snake. I can stay in the pool, I'm safe. So when we have that amygdala hijack, it triggers a stress response. And for these women, most of them came out of the pool, right? It triggers fight, flight, or freeze. We stop and we don't know what to do. And we feel stuck. And then it creates reactivity, right? We start to feel in certain ways and think in certain ways that are not helpful and highly unproductive. Or inability to be with the discomfort and the fear of the change that you're experiencing is creating these behaviors that are not helpful. And people in your lives are saying, what is up with you? It's the discomfort of the change that you're experiencing. It's the fear. It's the reactivity, the byproduct of the fear that you're experiencing. Okay, can you tell how excited I get when we start talking about the signs? The second thing I want you to understand about the brain science of this is the basic organizing principle of the brain. So I'm hearing some background noise. Sarah, can you help me identify who might not be on mute? Thank you. All right, organizing principle number 2. So our brain has a way of categorizing our experiences, right? It says, I like it, I don't like it, or I'm indifferent. So there's 3 categories that our brain will put our experiences in. And our brain is wired to simply want more of the things we like, less of the things we don't like. Very simple operating principle, right? Here's the problem. The more we like something, the more we become familiar with it. And the more we become familiar, the more comfortable we get. The more comfortable we get, the more we cling. We become attached. And in some cases, we become addicted almost to that comfort and feeling of safety. It's what's familiar. It's like wanting to leave your job and start your own company and being attached to the safety of your paycheck. Conversely, or rejection or aversion for things that we don't like can then lead to resistance. And if you weren't paying attention before, this is when you listen up. Because resistance is the source of suffering. And this is really at the core of why change is so hard, because even when it's good for us, even when the change is good for us, it introduces something new, something unfamiliar. We don't like unfamiliar. We don't want to let go of that bar. It's the suffering equation. Suffering equals the pain, which is the discomfort of the change that you're experiencing. But that discomfort, that pain is amplified by the extent to which you are resisting the change. So what does resistance look like? In summary, it is any way that you are wishing things were different than what they actually are. It's any way that you are wishing things were different than what they actually are. So, okay, great. This is helpful. You've done a great job telling me why this is so hard and what's getting in my way, but what do I do? Give me a thumbs up, heart, smiley face, a yes in the chat if you want to become more familiar with your change. So there's 2 things we have to do. We have to get to the root of what am I resisting? What am I resisting? What am I wishing was different than how it actually is? I'll tell you, so my mom passed away in 2021, and we had a long standing, like 3-year journey of her going through cancer. And being the overachieving, mix fix it, control freak type A person that I am, I found myself wanting to find a solution to fix what was happening. Now, the reality is it was stage 4 and there was nothing I could do. But the fact that I was wishing that reality was different, my inability to accept that she was dying, drove me to like sleepless nights of endless research, searching for some hope that I could do something. And that lack of sleep created agitation, frustration. My moments with her were filled with tension and tightness and frustration. And it took a long time for me to come to that place of acceptance. But once I did, it changed the quality of experience I was able to have with her. So let's investigate what that might look like in your situation with this change that you might be experiencing. If it's easier for you, invitation once more for you to close your eyes. And as you deepen your breath, I want you to really tune in to your experience of the breath. Oftentimes you hear focus on the breath. Well, what does that mean? What it means is to become familiar with the breath, maybe in a way that you've never before. So we can start by locating a part in your body where you can really experience the breath. I'll give you a few options. That might be at your nostrils or your lip. You can feel that tingling sensation of the breath. For you, it might be the sound of your breath, this wave, ocean-like sound. See if you can tune into that. Or for you, it might be the movement of your breath. If you place your hand on your chest or on your belly, you can feel the upward movement in the chest and the in and out movement in the belly. So choosing your own adventure here, the sensation, the sound, or the movement, I'm going to invite you, just take a few seconds to see what can you notice about your breath. The pace, the temperature. Is there a texture to the breath? Are you able to breathe freely, or does your breath somehow feel shallow and constricted? Just see what tiny details can I notice about the breath? So as you become familiar, I want you to get really comfortable in the space that you're in, because this is your home base. This is your anchor. This place in your body where you've located your breath can be a source of refuge in moments when whatever you're experiencing feels unbearable. You can come home to this place. And so in the same way that you've become familiar with your breath, let's apply the same technique to becoming familiar with this change that you are experiencing. What do you notice about the way that you are navigating this change? What thoughts do you have about what's happening? How do you feel about what's happening? Excitement, fear, frustration, disappointment, expansion. And if you're being honest with yourself, what would you say is the hardest part of this change? What's the hardest part? What are you having to get used to that you're not really loving so much? What might you be wishing was different than how it actually is? And now ask yourself, how can I be with this? Can I allow myself to be with this? Okay, take a deep breath in, open your eyes. When you're ready, very slowly, very gently, grace, right, Charlene? All the grace. And if something important came up for you, take a moment to write that down. The hardest part of the change is the pain. That's the pain. That's the discomfort. And the thing that you're wishing was different is the resistance. It's the amplifier that's probably making this harder than what it has to be. Okay. I have maybe 4 minutes to get us through strategies. Are you ready? All right. Let's talk about some strategies for how you can bring acceptance to the experience and really navigate whatever it is that you're experiencing with more grace, with more ease. And so the first is what I mentioned at the beginning, which is the universal law of impermanence. If we can just grasp this concept and accept it for what it is, whew, things just somehow feel different. It softens the hardness. So the universal law of impermanence is that everything in life has a beginning, a middle, and an end. If I could sing, I would sing the India Irie song where she says, the only thing constant in the world is change. So we can, by understanding this, accept that and even appreciate the ever-changing nature of life. It's like I have an orchid in my place. And when I left for Mexico, there were a couple buds. And I came back and the buds were now blossoms. And if you really stop to think about it, you never actually see that transition, bud to blossom, right? But that is change constantly happening. Every minute, the people, the things, the experiences, the circumstances are constantly forming, evolving. It's the cycle of life. Think about in the fall, when the trees drop their leaves in preparation for the winter. If they don't drop their leaves, they die. It's a necessary part of life for us to evolve, to shed, and to grow. If you have not read this book, must read When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. She says that impermanence is the goodness of reality, just as the 4 seasons are in constant flux, winter changing to spring, to summer, to autumn, just as days become night, light becoming dark, becoming light again. In the same way, everything is constantly evolving. The sunrise, the sunset, a permanent reminder of the evolution of life. So impermanence is a bit of a double-edged sword, because on one hand, it means that we're forced to let go of things, people, circumstances, and people that we often love and are accustomed to. Our kids eventually grow up, they move on with their lives. Our loved ones at some point, like it or not, will die. But impermanence also has the double-edged side, which is without impermanence, how is life even possible? Without impermanence, how do babies grow? Without impermanence, how will the sick get better? Without impermanence, so it's meeting and parting. It's falling in love and falling out of love. It's embracing change and accepting both sides of that sword. And it's honoring the hardship that comes by accepting change. And on the other hand, it's embracing the benefits that we can transform out of our challenges. We can transform out of our difficulties because of this impermanence. So accepting this universal law is about honoring life. It's about saying yes to life and all that it brings, the surprises, the beauty, and all the lessons. It's cultivating an attitude of amor fati, which is a slogan that I've come to love, which means an attitude of embracing what life brings our way and seeing every experience as necessary facets of life. And when we approach life with this kind of attitude, we can learn to experience the experience of life with so much more softness. It softens the hardship. In this way, I find that mindfulness is like fabric softener for the hardship of life. So the law of impermanence can help us to ease our way through a time of transition. Hello to you, Mr. Ashley B. Stewart. It's reminding ourselves that this too shall pass, and we can loosen the grip on the attachment to the familiar trapeze bar. The second is courage. It's tapping into the inner strength that lives inside of you. And in some cases, it's meeting a source of strength that you might not even know existed yet. Because in this in-between place of groundlessness, we have to learn to appreciate the yin and yang of life, the scariness of the unknown, and at the very same time, the excitement of possibility. So listen, do not allow the negativity bias of your brain and the reactivity that you know will come from this fear to rob you of your joy. We have to remember that suffering is rooted in a lopsided view of reality, the untrue stories that we tell ourselves about the one-sided possibility of how things could go wrong, and forgetting to imagine and give ourselves the permission to dream about the possibilities that we can create. And so much of the parts of us that get stuck is our inability to be with what is here. And so my invitation for you is to do number 3, find your anchor. We practice this today by just grounding ourselves into our breath. And we can tell ourselves in those difficult moments when we feel overwhelmed beyond our imaginations that I can breathe through this. And the more you practice doing that in a mindfulness meditation, the easier it becomes for the moments in our lives when we need it. The third is the circle of control. It's based on the idea that the degree to which we resist the change will determine how much we suffer. It's the suffer equation. And so the circle of control is another framework that allows us to activate our power and take command of the situation. So imagine a dartboard. The outer circle is the circle of acceptance. It's what we cannot influence or change, right? So it's like trying to remove permanent marker from a dry erase board or trying to stop the rain on a rainy day. The middle circle is your circle of influence, the things that you can actually have some impact on, but you might not be able to control entirely. And that center circle, this is your circle of power, my friend. That is your bingo. So activate your power by taking agency of what you can control. Forget about the rest. And you can do this as an exercise. You can draw this on a blank piece of paper and write, what do I have control over? What can I influence? What is everything else that I have to let go of? And ask yourself, I can either act or I can accept. I'm going to act on the things I can control or have influence on, and I'm going to learn to accept everything else. Simple. So I'm going to bring this to a close. We have 3 minutes left, and I'll just share a brief reflection that such is the nature of life. There will always be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so the more we practice both accepting the reality of impermanence and leaping into the possibility of our future self, the more we can realize and trust in our own resilience and resourcefulness, that at the end of the day, all will be well. 2 opportunities for you to continue this work, continue supporting yourselves and being in community with others who are on the journey. The first is a 40-day meditation challenge that we are launching on Sunday, January 29th. I will drop a link in the chat. And if you are ready for the journey of a lifetime, then you might consider joining us in Nepal in April, which Sarah has been the mastermind of planning. I'll let you talk more about that, Sarah.
Sure. Yeah, so as we learned, change is very hard, and, asking for help, I think, can be even harder. But, through both of these programs, you don't have to go through all of that struggle alone. When I went through my journey, talk about resistance, I really struggled and suffered through navigating this change alone and in silence. And I was so terrified of failing, not knowing what I was doing, because I definitely didn't, and letting people see I wasn't perfect. But once, we talked about courage as a tool to navigate these things. Once I finally found the courage to let those walls down that had protected me in the past, I realized there was so much love and support around me. And again, just doing these programs, you will be in the community of others who are also navigating these changes, and you'll learn from their own stories. And for me, it wasn't until I connected with others that I really started connecting more deeply with myself. And again, this is just why I created Impactury. I want to give other women a safe space to heal without the busyness and distraction of your daily life, so you can connect with yourself and really just become.
Can I just say, Sarah went over to Nepal for 2 weeks to do what I call a quality assurance check of what this experience will be like.
Yeah.
And I had the benefit of FaceTiming with her, getting videos. We had to pick the hotels and all the places. Let me just say, trip of a lifetime. Travel, personal transformation. She tested all the masseuses herself.
It was a hard trip.
Cultural immersion in this incredibly spiritually powerful place, but also the connection and the opportunity to do a social impact project. I mean, when I say the trip of a lifetime, the trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. Everything has been selected specifically to support you on your transformation journey. So we'll be visiting, ancient temples. You'll be doing meaningful social impact work, having dinners with inspiring women, and even visiting Mount Everest Base Camp by helicopter. And all of these things, again, they just support your journey. So if this is something you're interested in, it's April 17th to the 28th, and Sky is going to be the one who is leading all of your personal transformation. You saw how incredibly inspiring she is in just like 50 minutes. So imagine her in 2 weeks. So yeah, if you are interested in continuing to, interested in continuing to stay connected, you can screenshot this or connect with us on LinkedIn. You can check out our websites, impactury.com or Transcend. And thank you so much